At the
Dennis,
time,
I
there was
want
no
you to
texting.
understand, you maybe think this way, but when you tell Kyle and me and Anton listening on the other side of the studio, when you tell us that instead of eating chocolate donuts, you throw them, you sound like an idiot.
Is there some intro music?
No.
No intro music?
We have something that gets added somewhere. I don't know.
It counted us down, folks. Welcome to another quarantine-ravaged episode of Missouri Swagger. I'm Dennis Hopeless.
I'm Cullen Bunn.
Jesus Christ.
I'm Kyle Strahm.
This is good work, gentlemen. Wow.
Hey.
Starting off on the right foot.
You said we were quarantine ravaged. I'm trying to play to that.
Yeah.
I thought he said
we're-
rabbits.
Quarantine
Oh, wait.
rabbits.
We're quarantine rabbits.
Wait, are we rabbits or ravaged?
I didn't have my headset on. I don't know what you guys are saying.
I said ravaged. We're
Okay,
definitely
good.
not reproducing like rabbits in this neck of the woods.
No.
Although my children are here and awake, and they're in the front yard so I can see them. So if at any point I disappear, it's probably to pull someone out of the road.
Okay.
That's where we are.
That's good. Good.
I
Definitely
realized-
pull them out of the road.
I
There
realized
shouldn't
today
be
that
any
my
cars on the road. Aren't we locked
there-
down or something?
And don't you live on a cul-de-sac?
No, it's not a cul-de-sac. It is I live at the end of a street that turns into another street. It probably was a cul-de-sac once upon a time, but that was many moons ago. But no, the only traffic through is like people having gardeners come through and essential workers going to people's homes. Probably grocery delivery. I realized today that my level of homeschooling is essentially physical education because I spend most of the day trying to wear my kids out. I got a Achilles tendon injury the other day because I was chasing Cullen around with his scooter and then later chased him around in his Power Wheels, both of which require me to jog at a really weird gait, and I had normal shoes on.
Well, you
Just
know what?
so you know, that had nothing to do with you chasing anyone around on a scooter while they're riding a scooter. What that has to do with is you are getting old.
I run all the time. I never hurt myself. It's a weird hobble run, and I didn't have on good shoes. I am getting old. I know. My body hurts for other old man reasons.
So the best part of PE was when they brought in that big inflatable silver igloo and they showed you the stars inside.
Yeah, you had to climb in. It was like a
Mhm.
portable
They-
planetarium.
They never did that in North Carolina. They didn't do that in my school. My middle school and high school they just let you go. They didn't educate. They threw dodgeballs at you, and
You
they
never
made
had.
climb, they made
you
you
never-
climb rope.
You never did the flex arm hang.
Yeah, we had to do that, but they didn't do anything like a silver igloo full of stars.
Ah, okay.
You don't
Did
even
they
know what
check
we're
you?
talking about?
I mean, my son's done it now. He's done this. It's
Yeah.
basically the planetarium. They bring the
Yeah.
mobile planetarium to you. Yeah.
That's exactly what it is.
Did you have to do the scoliosis check?
Maybe, probably. Who knows? I don't know what that means.
Did
I
they
think
make
you
you
did.
take your shirt off and bend over and touch your toes and look at the straightness of your spine during health day?
No, we never did that.
Yeah, they were just like, fuck it, let them twist.
Yeah, we
So-
we didn't do that.
Speaking of
the
getting
best-
old, go ahead.
The best part of PE for me was days where you didn't dress out and you just sat on the bleachers with your friends.
That was a lot of days for me.
Yeah, me too.
So speaking of health day and getting old, the other day I was bragging about how I hadn't been to the eye doctor since like health day in 6th grade or last time we had that because I've got 20/20 vision.
And you realized you were talking to the wall and not to a real person.
No, my friend who works at an optometrist office said, Dennis, you're 38 years old. There's no way in hell you have 20/20 vision. You've just gotten used to it being blurry. And I tried to argue, but then I figured out quickly that I know nothing about the human eye, how it works. So probably I don't have 20/20 vision anymore.
No, you don't.
You might. I had 20/20 into my early 40s, and then it got flushed very quickly.
Maybe you just you got used to it too. You're both arguing with a doctor. You both don't know a damn
Oh
thing
no,
about
I didn't argue. He just said things like, "These are the best eyes I've ever seen on a person," and I was like, "Yes, sir."
Well, I
And
haven't
then the
even
next
been
time I
in.
went, he said, "These are the worst eyes I've ever seen on a person."
I have only had one of those tests with the thing where they drop down the lenses once in my entire life. Because I don't go in. Yeah, when also there's stuff that can start to go wrong that's not vision related that they have to check, apparently. Evidently, I'm just being irresponsible.
I had one of my eyes go terribly. It lost a lot of vision in the last couple of years, and I kept putting off going to the doctor. So until I got these glasses, for a while, I would shut one eye and it would just be blurry. So when I got these glasses, I was like, I'm reading every sign that I see. What's that sign say?
Sign says long-haired freaky people need not apply.
Yeah, I applied.
And just so you know, as I've said many times, this is what conversations devolve into between people in our age group. This is basically the conversation from Jaws, only instead of real wounds and injuries, we're talking about the things that are going wrong with us. You didn't get stabbed by anybody. Your eyes are just going bad.
Have you ever been stabbed by anybody?
Have I been stabbed by anybody?
Mm-hmm.
I got my hand almost cut off by a machine in wood shop.
But it didn't. No, it didn't get cut off. Today, I hope that Dennis will tell a story about a game he used to play called "Will You Die?"
Will you live? It was more optimistic. Yeah, the other day, I decided I was gonna get a little sun because I was getting a pretty fierce farmer's tan, running around after the kids. So I decided, well, I'll put sunscreen on and I'll take my shirt off and sit outside. And it turns out, as an adult, you have to apply the sunscreen a little more carefully because it's been several days and I am fried.
Is that the first time Dennis has started to take his shirt off on this show?
Sadly, no.
I didn't start to take my shirt off. I showed you my sunburn.
We edit a lot. There is a child in the background of your video, just so you know.
Hi, buddy.
We edit a lot of Dennis's taking his shirt off out of the video.
Okay, so that means your feet are really wet, buddy. Okay, go back outside. Okay, well, go talk to him.
Good parenting.
There we have it. You guys are mocking me, and my children are.
Would be mocking you anyway. We were mocking you before he interrupted.
That's what I'm saying. You're mocking me about my visual aid of my sunburn. I don't know.
So, what are we talking about today, gents?
Talking about games, tricks and games.
We've already hinted
Board
at this
games.
Amazing game you played called "Will You Live," but
I bet I told it as a Swagger story. When
I don't remember "Will You Live."
Okay, when I was a middle schooler, the neighborhood I grew up in as a child was mostly older people. One side of the road was a small local airport, so it was just fields so that the runway could be there. And the other side was a handful of homes, like maybe 10 homes that had been built, 50 years before. So it was mostly older people. It had been my grandparents' home my mom had grown up in. There were no kids. There were never any kids anywhere near us until I was in 7th grade, and a 9th or 10th grader kid moved up from Georgia. And his favorite game was trying to make me cry. Like we liked to play.
You liked to play, or he liked to play?
He liked to play. Well, I like to have an interaction that wasn't with my sister, who didn't have the time of day for me either. But he liked to play a game where he would take a piece of wood and whack you in the shin, and if you didn't call out, you won.
Did you whack him back?
No, because then he would have punched me in the face. Like it was a bullying situation. In hindsight, at the time I knew. And then we played.
You were this kid's. What was the kid in Christmas Story? He was Scut Farkus, and you were
Ralphie?
his little weasel. No, Scut Farkus had a toady named something. Dennis was this kid's toady.
No, there was another kid that lived a little ways up the street from us that moved in around the same time. He was the toady because he was the one that bought into it, and he only
whacked you with smaller sticks.
Well, no, eventually I stopped hanging out because then you had the toady and you had the guy that wanted to beat me up. But one game that he taught us was called which I didn't know what it was called. He just told us what we were going to do. So we would lay on a piece of plywood that was laying on the ground.
Would
And
he lay too?
Yeah, the three of us, me and the toady and the guy. And he had a crossbow, like a little short bolt crossbow, that he would fit a full-size arrow, so like a normal archery arrow in this crossbow, and he'd aim it straight up in the air over us, and it would go up and turn around and come back down, and the last person to move got a point. So you'd lay there, and then roll out of the way, and it would hit the board, and whoever moved first didn't get a point, whoever moved last did. I never got a point. Like, my little fat ass was out of there every single time. And we stopped playing when it hit the kid in the shoulder and stuck in. And so that was enough to make him quit. But I told that story for years about this game, and everybody always looked at me like I was insane and like I must have grown up in a junkyard like Aaron Gillespie. But at one point, some other hillbilly-ass person was at a party when I told the story. When I got done, he goes, "Will You Live? We played that shit." So apparently the game's called Will You Live?
All right. Yeah, I feel like I grew up in a pretty rural area, and we did a lot of hillbilly stuff, but we never played Would You Live?
Well,
That must have
we
been
never
harder
did.
than us.
We had rock fights. That's about as bad as it
Oh,
got.
yeah.
Well, also,
We had rock fights. We had, when I was 16, we did car dueling, where we chase each other in our cars through town, which was the stupidest thing anybody's ever done.
I figured out, I put paper towels. Or no, I think it was toilet paper. I would stuff toilet paper in each of the compartments in an egg carton, and then I would fill it up with water. And you'd get this like soggy wad, and we would have fights with those. But what we found is they would stick to the house far higher than you could reach. And for what seems like a long time after that, there were these wads stuck up on the house, and my dad was really unhappy about it.
Parents don't like that sort of thing. We made napalm. We got the Anarchist cookbook. We got the Anarchist cookbook when I was 14 or 15, and we wanted to make napalm. And there's two different ways to do it. I mean, this isn't real napalm, obviously, it's nonsense. But you can take packing peanuts, the styrofoam packing peanuts that dissolve, and you can dissolve those in gas. And we did that. But when that kind, it's really just like a pasty plastic inside gasoline that the gas burns off of, and it smells bad. And then supposedly the better kind was you take a cheese grater and grate Dove soap into gasoline as you double boil it, and it thickens it up. But obviously my mother wouldn't let me use a double boiler in the house for gasoline, so we decided to do it on her gas grill. So we were on my mom's back porch, double boiling gasoline on an open flame and shaving with I think I had a salad shooter. I was using a salad shooter to put Dove soap in. And obviously the flames came up over the side and caught the gasoline, and a big flame shot up, almost charred the siding on the side of the house. And then as we dumped water on it to try to get rid of it, which doesn't put gasoline out, by the way, it splattered everywhere, and it burned up my stepbrother's little plastic soccer goal. And that was maybe the angriest my mother ever got at me.
That's fair.
Next week on Super Saturday Morning, the adventures of young Tyler Durden.
I was going to tell a story about we had an ice cream fight, but it seems pretty trivial compared to making
napalm
and burning up your.
I used to make. We had rotten egg fights. We go steal eggs from the chicken coop and have egg fights, but never made napalm. But my favorite part of that story, Dennis, just so you know, is as you were telling it, your children were standing in the background. Their eyes were getting big. And then they ran into your bathroom and grabbed soap and ran out.
They have no access to gasoline, and they don't know what a double boiler is.
They will.
They're going to burn this house down. Like the karmic retribution I've got coming for the shit we did in high school. It's going to be a problem.
But we are not talking about making napalm. We wanted to talk about board games.
Sure. Can I tell the people a safer thing to do as a delinquent teenager is to take chocolate donuts and throw them at oncoming cars, because they stick and splatter on the windshield, but they don't hurt the car.
That's not safer if the cars are in motion. That's
It's
far more dangerous.
It's safer than a rock.
Don't throw anything at oncoming cars.
It is
That's
safer
the
than a
stupidest
rock.
thing.
Yeah, but you've got some idiot in a car who's going to jump out and shoot you because you threw a donut.
You do have to be able to outrun them, but they're going the opposite direction. Because what you do is lob it in front of them as you're passing, and you get the timing down, and then they drive into it.
And they could die. They could be in the middle of texting, and then that could be the
Well,
one extra
that's
thing
true.
that makes
And
them
also,
die.
Dennis, I
there
want
was
you
no
to
texting.
understand, you maybe think this way, but when you tell Kyle and me and Anton listening on the other side of the studio, when you tell us that instead of eating chocolate donuts, you throw them, you sound like an idiot.
At the time, I ate at least a third of the box. Also, you're right, there was no texting, so people were less distracted while driving.
You eat the entire box. I bought a bag of those chocolate donuts the other day, and I ate it in like 20 minutes.
I'm tempted to pull up my shirt and show you the area that's not covered in chocolate donut. So when we were kids, we would go over to Mike McElhaney's house, and we would have sleepovers, and we would always, this is stupid because we were in rural St. Joseph where there were almost no cars, but if a car would drive by, we'd all go out into the street and like flip them off and then run and hide behind trees. I don't know why we did that, but sometimes police cars would come by, and that was the most, everybody would be like, oh shit, let's flip them off. And then everybody'd scramble. It was stupid. I don't know what the point was.
It was that thrill. It was the adrenaline. I remember when I was a kid, my friend Vardell Smythe, he was a great guy, and his dad was the preacher of the church there in Mount Olive, North Carolina, and he lived in this great kind of old house. And on Halloween, he'd had these big Halloween parties. He'd have 15, 20 kids, and we'd go out trick-or-treating. And I remember one Halloween, we were out in the middle of Mount Olive, it's a lot of, little houses and everything. We're out wandering around, and this car drives by. And I believe it was my buddy Chris Mervin, but I'm not 100% sure. But he yells at him. He like flips him off and yells at him. And that car went by and it hit the brakes real fast and like turned around. And they chased us all over town for like 2 hours.
In your
and
car?
We all scattered. All 20 of us scattered. There were little groups who were hiding in garages and hiding in carports. And the car would drive by slowly looking for us. It was terrifying. And it was the most fun. I mean, I think it was one of the most fun nights we ever had, hiding from that car, which was probably a bunch of teenagers in the car, and they were just trying to scare us. But it was, it was exciting and fun to do it.
I get it. I think
I made some napalm, blew them up.
Yeah, I had a nemesis in high school. Something to do with my girlfriend. I don't remember exactly why he was my nemesis, but I wanted to fight him real bad. And then he was supposed to meet me out front of Hardee's where I worked at the time to fight. And
you think you would have been fired from Hardee's?
I mean, that would have been, I eventually was fired from Hardee's, so it would have been a blessing in disguise. But yeah, probably. No, because other employees.
This guy. I envision him pacing the parking lot at Hardee's, thinking about the donuts you threw at him.
He got the wrong Hardee's.
Yeah.
Well, no, what he did was instead of showing up to fight me, he rolled through and rolled his window down and said, "Fuck you," and stuck his middle fingers out and then took off. So my sister was dating a delinquent fellow at the time who later died in a high-speed car chase. And he said, hop in the car. So we get in the car and we chased this kid around all of Lee Summit and Independence until we eventually gave up and realized it's impossible to get someone out of a car because when you exit your vehicle, they drive away. But chasing that kid around like I was in an action movie was the most fun. Well, also, I was not in a fist fight. Like, I would have probably gotten my ass beat because I didn't want it to do. I had in my mind that, like, I'm just going to go up and beat him like Schwarzenegger. So probably what he should have done is gotten out and known how to fight, and then it would have been all over.
But if he didn't know how to fight and you didn't know how to fight, it might have worked out for you. I've never been in a fist fight, but I punched a dude, and that was the end of it. And because neither of us knew how to fight. And then he was like, "You're in a lot of trouble."
He said that after you punched him?
Mm-hmm.
About a year after this, the kid was a mouthy kid, so it doesn't surprise me, but he got his ass kicked outside of school by some other person that was a friend of my sister or knew my sister or something. And the principal called me in and sat me down and said, Chris was assaulted over the weekend, and he said that you had something to do with it. And it's like, first of all, I don't know what you're talking about. Secondly, this sounds like something that happened outside your jurisdiction. I wasn't in school, so you want me to admit to having paid someone to beat up? Yeah. And the principal was just like, go back to class, Dennis. So I don't know if the parents called. I don't know how that happened, like how it was that someone got beaten up on a weekend, and then I got called to the principal's office on Monday morning. That was always my favorite, when you knew you couldn't be in trouble, like you knew that they had nothing, and all you had to do was not incriminate yourself. You felt powerful.
Yeah.
You never feel powerful in principal's office. I'm not painting a very good picture of myself as a teen.
No, you're really not. I got called to the principal's office once to be a witness because there was a substitute teacher who was asked about his crazy religion. Like, everybody knew he had some wild ideas. And so he went off on a tangent telling everybody about all of his beliefs. And then somebody in the class complained that he was spreading his gospel. And they called me in to ask about it. And I was pissed off because the dude was clearly egged into talking about it. So I made it pretty clear to them that he was asked several times to continue talking about it. But
Did he get fired?
They didn't tell me that shit.
Did you ever see him substitute again?
No, but it was a high school, so, you know.
Did you see him at the meetings of Zerg, the Dominator, when you went to the church group with him?
Yeah, we co-hosted those. We did have I wish you guys knew about this guy. There's a guy named Mr. Parmalee in St. Joseph who was a substitute at all through my entire education from grade school to high school. And he was this really weird guy, and he talked about how he knew how to make time travel work. And everybody loved him because you could just get him to talk about time travel. And you'd ask him a question at the beginning. You'd be like, Mr. Parmalee, how do you weigh the earth? And then he'd be like, oh, well, that's easy. And then for 20 minutes, he would describe while giving you drawings on how you can weigh the earth. And we'd all be like, fuck yeah, we're not learning any math today. The joke's on us.
Did
You guys learn how to weigh the earth.
Did you guys have regular substitutes who would show back up, like, or was it always someone different?
No, we had
both. Yeah.
Yeah, we had regulars. We had one that we knew was sneaking shots of bourbon, like out of her purse every few minutes.
Every few minutes.
Yeah, she drank a lot of bourbon, it seemed. But yeah, we had regulars.
Did you have any of the regulars that hated you?
No, that was just you, I think. Most of my teachers loved me.
In high school, the regular teachers hated me, and the substitutes liked me.
Why did they hate you?
They thought I was a burnout. They thought I was a drug addict. They thought I didn't care.
Were any of those things accurate? I
did not care because they sucked. They were horrible teachers. I had the worst teachers in the world. I went to it was an awful high school experience. I'm surprised anyone that goes to school in North Carolina, when I went to school in North Carolina, got an education. And they can all kiss my ass. I had 2 good teachers in high school in North Carolina.
Well, I don't think that is. I think the teachers who you have a real connection with, who teach in the way that you respond to, is always going to be a low number like that, because everybody's different. Like, I had
lots of sort of low, teachers who were middle of the road, nothing. But then I had a lot of really awful teachers that just didn't get it, and they were just jackasses. Yeah. And then I had a couple of really great teachers who did get it and were awesome.
I had a teacher in middle school who was the science teacher, and I think he just hated kids and his job. And everybody was terrified of him. He had really intense eyes, and he would give you detention. Like, if you forgot your book, detention. He'd give you detention for anything. And at one point, I was up moving something, and I he was out of the classroom, and I knocked a beaker off the table, and it shattered. And I was terrified because when he came back in, I had to go up and be like, hey, I broke that. And he looked at me with his evil eyes, and he had a beard. He was gaunt, and he had a pointed beard, and he really stern. He looked at me and he's like, did you do it on purpose? And I was like, no, it was an accident. And he's like, well, accidents happen. And that was it. And I was relieved. In that same class, I got one more. In that same class, there was a guy who used to pick on me, and one day I threw one of these heavy textbooks at his face, and his nose just like burst out blood, and it was all over his shirt. And he was like, "After school, you're fucked." But nothing ever happened. But he did leave me alone, so it works. Hit him hard, and they'll leave you alone.
I had my marketing teacher in 11th and 12th grade, his name was Mr. McPherson, and he was awesome. And he had, I remember he had his office, like he had his classroom, but he had a separate little office, and it was just full of baseball cards because he just collected baseball cards, just tons of unopened boxes of baseball cards. And when you go in to meet with him, almost invariably, he'd take an unopened box of baseball cards down and open it. And as he's talking to you, he just starts opening packs and seeing what he's got. And I remember when this guy, I think it's his Tommy something, for some reason he wanted to fight me, and he came into class and he goes, "There's nothing between us but air and opportunity. There's nothing between us but air and opportunity. We're going to fight today after school." I was like, "Fine, I don't care, just leave." And Mr. McPherson called me back into the room, and he's like, "What was that all about?" And I was like, "I don't know." And we talked about it. He said, "Well, you're going to fight him, aren't you?" I was like, "Yes." I was like, "I guess I am." And but he never showed up for the fight.
What a loser.
The next day he came back and he was like, we're good buddies. You didn't tell on me about something. You didn't tell I was going to fight you, so we're friends now. And I was like, "Well, we didn't fight, so."
That kid probably had a bad home life. I got attacked in newspaper class. I was in newspaper, but only my senior year.
Was it libel? Like a libel attack?
No, a physical attack.
Because
the newspaper was mostly seniors that year and juniors, and then a handful of underclassmen because you had to get special whatever to get in there. And one of the seniors' little brother was in it, and he got picked on by everybody all the time. Like, I wouldn't say that I particularly picked on him. Like I wasn't like the asshole.
This isn't a story about you defending him. It's a story about you also picking on him.
What, buddy? If you take your shoes off, yeah. No, I like I'm saying, I didn't. He got picked on by the room, sort of. I did not go out of my way to pick on him, and I was not one of the loudest voices. But no, I didn't defend him. Come on. But apparently, at some point, I had said something that offended him because I came in to the newspaper class after lunch, and it was just me and him, and he was doing something, and I just commented like innocuously on it, but he had enough. And he flipped over the table and picks up these colored pencils and throws them at me, and like is like raging. And then the teacher came in and he kind of got caught and left. And it come to find out his parents were going through a divorce or something, and he just had stuff going on at home. But when they called me to the office for that, I was very confused. I was like, "What happened? Why is this?" I'm like, I don't have any idea what happened. Any other time, if someone had like lashed out, I would have understood that I was being a dick or it was something I'd done before. But yeah, I was very confused. And years later, I found out that, yeah, he was just having a rough home life at the time. So probably the kid that inexplicably wanted to fight Cullen and then said they were friends afterward, it's because of whatever was going on.
listen, I don't need to understand people.
Okay.
I don't need to understand his pain or his sense of loss. He's a jackass.
Now he's like a 48-year-old man.
I'm just kidding.
Or he's dead. Could be
I
dead.
do care. I care that he might have been going through some terrible things back then.
Cullen, when you were a child, what was your favorite board game?
Board games were weird for me. I like that we're finally turning it to the discussion of board games because that's been our plan. We set out before this recording. We said, you know what? We get on here and we just talk about nonsense. We need to have a theme for every episode, and board games was it.
I think our theme is like bullies and
yes, juvenile delinquency.
So far it's the theme of delinquency and I guess. Would You Live is sort of a board game. You were laying on a board. Yeah.
You were bored.
We were bored or it wouldn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, for sure.
No, I don't know. I was trying to think what the first board game I remember playing was. And I think the first game I vividly remember playing was Clue.
You must have
my
sucked at
neighbors.
it. You must have been terrible.
No, I was good at it.
Really?
Yeah, I was good at Clue.
How old were you?
I had to be young. This had to be kindergarten or.
Yeah, so probably the people you were playing with were just terrible at it.
Well, we were probably all kindergartners.
Mm-hmm.
I remember because my neighbor that lived on the farm next to us had like a closet full of board games, and her grandson would come over, and when he came over, I'd go play with him when we played Clue. So I don't know. I probably was bad at it, but that was probably the first board game I really, really remember.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, now that you mentioned Clue, I remember playing Clue and Monopoly at my grandpa's when they'd have big family gatherings. And I was terrible, of course, because I was a child. My grandpa always won. I understand why now, because he was good at that stuff. But
he was good at strategy and didn't want kids win, right?
Exactly. But now I understand the strategy he used to win, whereas before I was just like, Grandpa's really good at this. But now I'm really good at it. So
you are very good at strategy.
I need a big family whose ass I can kick at Monopoly.
See,
last time we played Monopoly, this guy
won.
Uh-huh.
See, my parents they didn't particularly care for board games, and they would never sign up for anything that took a long time. So as a child, I was told that our mousetrap was broken and it was impossible to build a mousetrap, and that Monopoly
all these pieces
was missing.
This will never work.
And I can remember getting it out and asking Mom, like, how does this work? And she's like, I don't know, it must be broken. And that's what she would say about Monopoly. Like, we didn't have all the cards, when really she just didn't want to spend 7 hours.
Yeah.
I used to play Mousetrap at Mrs. Porter's house too. I remember going there and playing Mousetrap. Yeah.
We got it. We dug ours out of the closet for my nephew, and it's way more fun just to put it together and play with it than it is to
don't
play
worry
the game.
about the game. Just set the trap off. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. You're frozen.
Yeah,
you're unfrozen. All right.
I am?
No, it's all good.
All right.
I keep thinking that Cthulhu behind you is Max Rebo, but it's not.
It can be if that makes you feel better. But
go ahead.
So board games have changed so much. I mean, now they're big business, $1 million Kickstarters, and they're super elaborate. But I was trying to think of the games that I was like, that kind of shook my world a little bit, like really changed for me. And I like I said, I brought some visual aids here, fellas. So this one is from when I was a kid. And I think all I ever did, do you remember Dungeon?
Yeah, we played that once, didn't we?
I've never played this ever with anyone.
I was not born. I don't think I was born when you were playing.
So this was TSR's original board game to try to tempt people into playing, to trick them into eventually playing Dungeons and Dragons. And it was like, you wander through a maze and you encounter monsters and you gather treasure and you get magic items.
Is it like
I never
kids?
played it because I was already playing Dungeons and Dragons from a young age. So that seemed kind of a step backwards. But I was going through my game closet and it was there. And I was like, oh, yeah, the box art was cool. And it seemed like a cool game.
I remember playing like beginners D&D that was a board game. So maybe that was
Similar,
the next generation of Dungeon. I don't know.
Well, my kid and I are playing like Castle Ravenloft right now. And it's awesome. And it's basically 4th edition Dungeons and Dragons in terms of the rules. But that game's a lot of fun.
The biggest game when I was like 10 or 12 or whatever, the game everybody wanted who was a young boy was Kiro Quest.
Oh, yeah.
Hero Quest. And I remember playing that at a friend's house, and then I wanted that for Christmas, and I got it. And the sad thing, we probably played it once or twice back at my old apartment on Bell Street. But the sad thing about it is once you get it, most of your time you can't play it because your family doesn't care,
right?
And like my older sisters didn't want to play it, so I spent a lot of time building maps and not very much time playing them.
Well,
yeah, that's the problem with board games that require like 4 and up players, is unless you have a friend group that likes it. Yeah, there's either half of the people don't want to play, or you can't ever find anyone to play.
Well, when I was 10 years old, the greatest bit of technology was created. And that was the Dungeons and Dragons electronic board game.
Is that open? All your games are sealed?
No, that's not sealed. That box is falling apart, man. It's like...
What does it do? Oh, I mistook the raggedy edges for plastic seams.
So this is the
it?
maze that your
Cool.
characters wander through. And it came with awesome little lead miniatures. And you walk your characters through it. Oh, can't go that way. Oh, wait. And it gives you beeping sounds to tell you if you're going the right way. Boy, this guy's...
Oh, he got lead poisoning and died.
I woke the dragon up.
Oh, shit.
And then the dragon chases you around the board electronically. And I thought this was the greatest creation that had ever been created. But there you go. Electronic D&D.
Is that what you use for the game map when we play our Zoom one?
No, because the game map changes every move.
Did people ever draw penises on that like they do on the other game map?
You can't draw on it, Kyle. You can't.
All right.
So Cullen is running a game, a D&D game for us and Anton and Chris Grine and so a few of his other friends. And the first night we played was a bit of a shit show, for largely my fault because it was extremely late.
I had a good time.
I had a great time, but I was an hour and a half late. So I think that I added to the tension. And apparently before I got there, penises were drawn on the game map, which I didn't know was possible.
Yes, they did draw penises on the map.
But Cullen did a great job, and I really enjoyed that game, even though last time he made it so I didn't get to do anything for an hour and a half.
That was your choice, brother. That was your choice, my friend.
You got to come up with stuff to do. You got to.
I tried. The lady wouldn't let me seduce her.
Let's save D&D talk for some other time. This isn't D&D.
You were just talking about D&D.
When I was a kid, I have 2 older sisters. So the tragedy, it's not a tragedy. A funny thing about my childhood is for a long time, my grandparents would get my sisters whatever toys they were into, and they would get me the guy associated with that toy line.
Sure.
So I would get like the purple pie man from Strawberry Shortcake, who's kind of a badass toy.
It is kind of a great toy.
But I'd also get Rio from Jim and the Holograms, the like purple-haired dude. Eventually, I started to get the stuff I was into. But I remember playing a game called the Cabbage Patch Kid something game, and it was an electronic disc. It was like a pie-shaped apparatus that had a lot of holes in it, and you would slide a thing on the side, and a timer would activate, and when you slid it, the pie would twist, and out of each of the holes would quickly rise a plastic naked baby. They all like these bald little naked babies. And as the timer clicked, the naked babies would slowly lower back into the hole. And it looked like a Cabbage Patch. So each of these holes was a little cabbage. And the point was you had to grab them and look at the bottom, and they'd have a name because all the Cabbage Patch Kids had names. So I can't think of any of their names. Mary Alexander, Ginny B, whatever. But you had to match the names. You had to find the ones with the same names. It was a memory matching game that was timed. And so eventually your little fingers would get stuck because the bulbous head of the Cabbage Patch Kid, your fingers would be under it and it would go back down. It would
By
pinch
the way,
you
if that was a Garbage Pail Kid game, Kyle would have it on that shelf behind him right now.
That's true. You're absolutely right. So I remember that game. I remember a game when Little Shop of Horrors came out. I think my sister stole this game and took it back with her. I won't get into that. But it was the plant, Audrey 2, and you had to like put marbles or take marbles off of its tongue, and if it snapped closed, you lost. It's pretty badass. I might actually get that when I'm back in St. Joe, and I might steal it.
I had the Jaws board game when I was a kid. When the board game, it was just a plastic shark, and his mouth was open, and he had like pieces of a ship's wheel, and you had to fish him out with a hook, and he would snap closed if you touched him.
Yeah, sounds like the same thing. Less loud than Operation.
Yeah. What's the game where you pushed down a yellow plastic thing and it had little shapes in it and you had to
Trouble.
No, it's not Trouble. Trouble had the Pop-O-Matic bubble.
Perfection?
It had a timer and then they'd all explode out.
Yeah. Was it called Perfection?
Yeah, Perfection.
Maybe.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it was Perfection. Yeah.
I had that. I had Kerplunk, which is the one with the marbles on top and the little like sticks that go through the cylinder, and you had to pull a stick out but try not to drop any marbles down.
I always wanted Hungry Hungry Hippos.
My sister had that.
My mom sang at a church, and they had it there in the kids section, and I liked playing with it.
There was I never had this game, but you talking about the Little Shop of Horrors game reminded me of it.
The Little Shop of what?
Little Shop of Horrors.
Okay.
When I was a kid, slime was really popular. You could buy it in these garbage pails, and it was like.
Yeah, that continued for a long time.
And there was a board game called Green Slime where I only played it once at some friend's house, and it had a slime monster who would walk around the board, and if you ever landed on the same spot as the slime monster, you'd press the monster down, and he'd basically just splooge slime all over your token.
That sounds like a Ghostbusters toy. Those are
some
good toys.
Yeah, I mean,
there was a He-Man toy like that too.
Dude, did I send? No, I didn't. On Instagram, I saw a photo. Somebody posted a photo of a Mattel event where they were selling He-Man toys, and there was a dude dressed as He-Man, and there was a guy dressed as Hordak, the leader of the Horde. But behind them was a full-scale reconstruction of that like skull head that the ooze pours out of.
Yeah,
cool.
And there are like kids like playing in the slime pit, and
that's awesome.
I couldn't believe they put that much effort into creating that thing, but they were really bringing in the dough in the early days of He-Man.
Well, of course.
Yeah, well, I feel like it's just time and money that stops us from doing that, so it makes sense.
Yeah, that's true.
Now there was a game that I wanted when I was a kid and I never got, and I finally bought it recently, and I haven't played it since I bought it. And that was Dark Tower. Now this was an electronic marvel.
We should play that game.
We should play this game
after there's no more pandemic.
So I pulled it out of the box and I looked at the tower just today to see how it works, and it plays cool music.
It works?
Yeah, it still works.
I mean, it's just a thing that.
Yeah, but if you left the batteries in it, it wouldn't work.
Look, it has lights that spin around.
Did you back the Kickstarter for the new one?
I arranged to get one. I wasn't able to back the Kickstarter, but I talked to a retailer who did.
I would have, except I didn't like that it relies on an app, and my computer went to sleep. Am I still here? All right.
Yeah, you didn't go away.
So it relies on an app, and if I'm going to spend that much money on a game in 10 years, I don't want the app to be obsolete. But I will spend a lot of money on Cthulhu Wars, which is the game I play the most now, which was which is a Kickstarter a few years back, which appeals to completists like me. So now every time there's an expansion, I curse its creator and back it.
Yeah.
And
whenever I get a message from Kyle that says, "Damn Sandy Peterson," I know there's a new Kickstarter that just got launched.
But yeah, at this point, there are so many things, so many expansions. I don't even think that we've played them all. And for a while, I was playing every week. Like a group of guys would come and we'd play every week. But it's fun. It's a good game. It's got these giant pieces. Actually, here's an expansion that I have not played that just arrived recently. And this is another giant Cthulhu.
Yeah, I mean, it's an impressive looking game too when you play it. It's a fun looking game.
Oh yeah, it's giant. The pieces are huge. It looks like you're really into something. It's perfect if you like toys, but you don't like to play with toys because you have rules and you get to actually use these things.
Extremely good at strategy games, and he figures out all the ins and outs. Yeah. And that game, every faction you play has a different way of winning and different rules and different things happening. So the first time we played, I felt like it was a good time. And then because I had my kids half the time, I would miss several weeks. And eventually that game became unplayably difficult because I would just be confused and doing what people told me and then getting yelled at. And so whenever
you would love the game if you played it. I don't know. I think you'd love it if you got into it. Because we played 1,000 games of Risk.
Right.
One of my favorite board game experience was a Cthulhu Wars with Kyle at a convention in
It was the Air Capital Con.
it was Air Capital Con, yeah. And
Jimmy brought it.
Who was your friend who had never played before that night?
Was it Link W. Herman?
Yeah. And like somebody was winning the game, and
It was Valdemar, I think.
Yeah, Link was he had the one opportunity to defeat Valdemar, and
he got one die, and he had to roll a 6, and he did.
I think we would have carried that guy around on our shoulders if it hadn't been late and we all hadn't been very old. So.
Was Valdemar furious?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, well, when Valdemar gets furious, he gets very quiet and sits. And
I would have been furious in his place because he had that game locked up until that one lucky die roll.
Well, see, that's why I had to.
Or was it Ross? It might have been Ross.
It was somebody who'd never played before.
What'd you say, Dennis?
Well, that's why I have to be careful with video games and board games and anything, is that I'm very competitive. And so if I care too much, and I don't like feeling like that. I don't like feeling like I care too much. I either care not at all or I care way too much. And so it's easier to just not play stuff for the most part. And it's frustrating to play a game where everybody else is good, because I don't want to just suck for like 30 times until I catch up. That's not very fun for me. So I'm careful with it, because that's what happened with Risk. Kyle was much, much better than me at Risk, but we played this thing called games by email, where you would email each other, or the system would email you if it was your turn. It was just an extremely rudimentary Risk game.
But it was called Gambit.
Yeah. And at the time I had a day job, and in the winters we had very little to do. So Kyle would we would send each other turns just over and over and over and over again. So eventually I feel like I caught up to your level of Risk.
Well, with Risk, I mean, once you get it, right? And so it would escalate to the point that we had multiple games going on. And then we'd get to a point where we would be like, oh, I recognize that I've lost this game. I'll let him finish it out, but I'm going to start a new game where we can actually compete. And at one point we invited our friend Aaron Gillespie to play with us, who was far less invested and far less equipped to compete, but we would manipulate him and use him as a weapon against each other. We would send him private messages.
Well, it was also, you could just set him up so that he would make the obvious attack.
Yeah.
So that you could send him in a direction. But what we found, Kyle and I got along great doing this via email, but what we found is when we tried to play actual Risk with other people, we get very loud and ruin the game for everyone else because we try to give them friendly advice, and it doesn't go well.
Yeah.
Well,
but
I'm not good at Risk. So
we played hundreds of games of Risk.
I heard thousands is what I'd heard.
Well, I mean, maybe we did.
It's possible.
Thousands of hours. Risk is a long game.
Yeah, but it's not that long if it's 3 players and one of them is a computer or Aaron Gillespie.
Yeah, and you don't have to wait for people to make their move. You just move on to your next thing.
Right.
So
also, we were using it as a procrastination tool.
Right.
We were supposed to be working while we were doing it.
So we were talking about games to play when we all get together next, and
Cthulhu Wars.
Cthulhu Wars, but a horror game that predates Cthulhu Wars. Did you guys ever play Nightmare?
No.
Oh.
So Nightmare came out in the 90s.
I play it every night recently, Colin.
Right. It came out in the 90s, and it's sort of a game where you wander around a graveyard collecting keys.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of, whatever. But it also came with
who left all their keys?
A videotape.
Oh.
Videotape. The keys look like this. This key unlocks the gate to time. Ooh, a time key. But it came with a videotape. And you'd play this tape as you were playing the game. And it had a Crypt Keeper character who just sits on the screen. And every now and again, he'd say, "Stop! Whose turn is it next?"
It's like that Star Trek game.
Yeah.
I have that in the closet up there, but I'm not getting it.
This is not my original copy of this game. I bought it at a yard sale, a few years later.
You didn't draw wyverns all over it?
I did not draw wyverns over it, but I just found something very disturbing, and not disturbing, but maybe sad. because I haven't opened it until right now to look at it and pull the box off. And I guess in the game, they had these blank cards that you were supposed to write your greatest fear on.
Oh, no.
And the people who had this game before me wrote their greatest fears on some of the cards. And so here's Michael Myers. Somebody was afraid. Their greatest fear was Michael Myers.
From Austin Powers.
This person was the cringe. I don't know what that is, but they were apparently afraid of the cringe. This person was afraid of drowning.
Maybe. Well, that's a real fear. Maybe Anton knows what the cringe is.
And this is the saddest one. Loneliness. Written very small.
That was the parent. The parent wrote that.
But I think we should play this game. Apparently on YouTube, they've got you can put the Crypt Keeper or whatever on YouTube and play the game with him on the screen.
Let's do it.
So you
Sounds
don't have
like
to
a
plug
good
VCR
plan.
in.
So
The cringe.
it's no risk, but it does involve loneliness and the cringe.
So
Yeah,
it's a lot
anytime I tell
risk.
like hardcore board gamers about our playing so many games of Risk, they'll be like, "Why would you? That game is so broken. Why would you play that?" Well, because
every game.
Don't hate. Just let
Every
people
game is
enjoy
broken
Risk.
eventually. Like all these expansions for Cthulhu Wars totally break it.
Yeah, for sure.
It's also the case that the other games that they had on Games by Email, either we didn't understand at first, or were not very much fun.
We played that one. What was that one called? It was like a
One
weird.
was called Kyle Figures Out Strategy Much Faster Than You Do, so you will lose 100 games in a row.
Oh, but it was fun. And then Aaron didn't know what to do in that game.
No. Remember we played with Chris Grind? He just got mad.
Yeah.
I like making.
Oh
Chris
wait, we need to show off our amazing new Missouri Swagger logo.
Oh yeah, we do.
I'll send it to Anton, and Anton can put it into the video here. I hope he will. Will you, Anton?
The one that Chris Grind designed.
So
for
Chris
us?
Grind was kind enough to, out of the blue, send us a beautiful illustration of the three of us.
Yes.
That we can use for future Missouri Swagger content.
Well,
Maybe
first he sent us
t-shirts.
a not safe for work Easter bunny drawing on Easter Sunday, and then we got what appeared to be just a like happy-go-lucky Missouri Swagger logo. That's awesome. And then he sent us a sketch of the back view, which was also not safe for work, because Chris is a monster. But yeah, it's
So,
great.
y'all in the comments, you should tell us your favorite board game, not your favorite video game, but board game.
Board games only.
And Cullen, the Predator is available now. We should play it.
Yeah, I'm ready. I think I accidentally bought it during the beta test phase. So,
I know you did. You told me as much.
yeah. So I'm ready to play.
Anyway, Dennis, where can people find you on the internet?
Best place to find me is Hopeless Dent on Twitter, or just search my name on Twitter. And then I had Dennis Hopeless Comics on Instagram if you want to send me a DM or see pictures of my kid's Halloween costume, because I don't ever put anything on it.
Cullen?
You can find me at cullenbunn.com or on Twitter at Cullen Bunn. Those are the best places to find me.
All right.
Or on Patreon. I have a Patreon under my name as well. So.
Mhm. And I have a Patreon as well, Kyle Strahm. And you can find me on Instagram at KyleStrahm_. And please be sure to like Missouri Swagger and follow us. And
Tell your friends.
And
Tell your friends.
Tell your friends.
That was creepy, Kyle. I didn't like that at all. You were like the Crypt Keeper, only
that was my impression of the cringe.
That was the cringe. All right, everybody.
Thanks,
well, thank you, Dennis. Let's make sure everybody knows we'll be better next time.
Oh yeah, we'll do better next time. Next time, whenever I say he counted us down, folks, Colin will be paying attention and he'll say his name. And
I was already paying attention.
And I'll be present.
Take it easy, everybody.
Bye, folks.
We have something that gets added somewhere. I don't know.